Welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief McCall from Kerrville PD in Texas. He has 28 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief McCall. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. No, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I was hoping we could start with a little bit of background on you. Who are you? How'd you get started? And what has your career looked like so far?
I've been in law enforcement for 28 years. I started actually I started as a reserve police officer for a very short time and worked at a university for 2 years, Texas Tech University. And then I moved to New Mexico and did a 20-year career at the Hobbs, New Mexico Police Department, retired there. Actually thought I was done with law enforcement at that point and walked away as retired and the calling of law enforcement kind of pulled me back in about a year later, and I found myself looking for that second career, and opportunity came open in Kerrville, Texas, and I applied and just been blessed to be here ever since. Have a great team here. It's a great community, and I really feel blessed to have landed here.
Yeah. I actually talked to a lot of chiefs that retire and they're like, I'm done. And then they're like, nope, I'm not done yet. I have a little bit of fire left in me, a little bit of gas left in the tank. So, I know when you and I talked offline, this topic of wellness was something that was really important to you. And I know you said that when you came to your organization, there really wasn't an established wellness program. And that's something that you've been really focusing on building kind of from the ground up. Why is that important to you? And what has that looked like so far, building something from scratch?
So, we had an incident here about 4 years ago. It was at a event called Race Wars, where a race car on a track lost control, went into the crowd and killed multiple people. At that event, saw one of our personnel and a person from another department there. They were just walking around, kind of talking to the folks involved, and I called them over and asked, "Hey, what's your assignment here?" And they said, "Well, we've kind of self-dispatched here as peer support." And I said, "Hey, I wasn't aware we had that." They said, "No, we're kind of informal.
Mm.
We kind of do this behind the scenes." And from that event, recognized real quickly that we really needed to formalize a program, that we had a hole in our organization, that we need to ensure that we were supporting our people in those types of incidents, and we really didn't have that formally. We really went to work trying to formalize that, and through policy and through training, we've tried to put together a program internally utilizing exterior resources as well, to try to prop that up and get that going for our agency.
Yeah. And I know, I talked about this offline, but there are a lot of agencies who kind of don't know where to start or what to do. And there also are a lot of leaders who listen to this podcast who are looking for maybe different ways or different insights. And so, I know you said the peer support was kind of that first step. What was the second step for you, and how did you start building out the program that you have today?
We started looking for resources within our community, within our department, and as we built the overall wellness program, we recognized that the peer support, the mental health support was a piece. The physical and nutrition was a piece. We looked internal to our organization and found that we had personnel that had college degrees that matched some of those needs, and they were very willing to step in and fill some of those niche positions to help our agency. We have an officer that assists with nutrition for folks, helps them with nutrition plans. We have another officer who helps with exercise programs. Actually, a couple that will do that are certified trainers that step in and assist with that. They routinely put out just basic information on things that you can do throughout the week that doesn't necessarily require a full workout, just things to try to get people jump started in that direction. Uh, so we've looked internal. We have a very supportive community. We looked external. We found professionals that were willing to step in and help our organization for little to no cost. We also got those folks tied in with our employee assistance program so that there was an ability for them to build the city through our EPA program. Uh, so we really tried to look across the board in a holistic manner of, okay, what can we do? I don't necessarily think we're doing anything groundbreaking here. We're really stealing ideas from other agencies and what we saw other agencies doing and tried to implement what worked for our organization.
I think that's the best way to do it, though. And I think it's really interesting because I still find that a lot of agencies are so siloed, and I think the more we talk about these things, the more you can see like who's doing it really well and what are some things that I can take back from, surrounding agencies. You don't even have to necessarily look at other agencies across the country. While you certainly can do that, some of the biggest and, I'll put in quotes like biggest and best wellness programs out in the country. But I would imagine that your neighboring agency might have one thing that is really working that you could easily implement. I was actually doing a presentation, and we were having a roundtable. It was a group full of chiefs, and they were talking about the things that they were doing organizationally. And one of the chiefs said, something that was really cool, and I won't be able to do it justice, but it was something that they were doing that was really working for them. And everyone just kind of like propped up, and they're like, wait, what? And they started asking questions. And these are all like really close knit, like friends. They all knew each other really well. And I asked the question after, I was like, did you guys know that he was doing that they were doing that organizationally? And they're like, no, this is the first time we're hearing about it. And so, maybe it's a reminder to anyone who's listening, the more that we can talk about it and the more that we can share ideas, the better. And I like to steal all the things that I think are really good too, and I always say that like any like quote or way of doing something or a different viewpoint, it's like, how can we share those ideas to elevate, where we are today? And I really like that you said that you are leveraging the talent within the organization, because every PD, every first responder agency across the country has people who have various strengths. And if you can tap into those, it creates more culture and community and buy-in, because you have someone who people already trust, they already know, they feel safe with, who are now, offering assistance with, like you said, some workout plans or maybe some nutrition plans. And so I really like that you said, hey, like, who do we have here that is willing to do it, who has these strengths that we can leverage in a good way? I don't mean like leverage. I feel like sometimes when you say leverage, it feels like icky, but you know what I mean.
Sure, yeah, and and we're a relatively small organization. We have a total of 80 personnel. 58 of those are certified officers. So it's not like we have hundreds of people to draw from. And we were surprised at the talent that we had inside our organization
Mhm.
that we could leverage
Yeah.
to create or supplement these programs. You talk about borrowing ideas from other agencies. We have a recognition program that we brought in that I saw in another agency that made sense. It's a poker chip program, and it's one of those things that, okay, how can we easily recognize our folks and give them, support their confidence and support, what they're doing daily, not waiting for that. Okay, I've got to write an entry in this person's file because they did a good job doing this. This is more of a program that our supervisors carry small poker chips. Somebody does something that they're like, hey, that's special. Let's recognize, or you did that really well. And it gives that immediate feedback. And that was something that we acquired. I shouldn't say stole. We acquired
Yeah.
that I acquired that from another chief that I saw that was utilizing that program successfully. And you think through, okay, how do you create a wellness program? But there's more to that wellness program outside of mental health, nutrition, physical fitness, and part of that is organizational health and how do you ensure that you're supporting your people daily and giving them the feedback they need daily. And that was one of the ways that we approach that, and we're fairly successful with it. People enjoy that. Everybody enjoys hearing they did a good job, and when they can earn something for it, it's very beneficial.
Yeah, I would argue because we talk about these different pillars of wellness. We talk about mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial. I would argue that recognition and value is a piece of that. It's a part of wellness, and I think you're exactly right. I was having a conversation recently. I've actually had this conversation a couple times where um chiefs are trying to say, like, how can we incorporate some of like the good effort and work that they do? How can we make sure, like you said, that we're letting our employees know that we appreciate them, that they did a good job? Because you're so inundated with negativity sometimes, when people yelling at you, or, maybe you didn't do the quote unquote like absolute best job that you could have, and it feels like it's kind of negative feedback loop. But how can you counteract that with the positive piece of it? And is the chip program, do you have it where you guys trade it in for prizes?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I think I had that chief on here, and he told me about this.
Okay.
And I'm familiar, and he said you can get little prizes, as you collect them, and like you can trade in, small amounts for smaller prizes, and then larger amounts for larger prizes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we
Okay.
have everything from, water bottles with our logo to spider coat knives,
Yeah.
uh, plaques, portfolios, any of those kind of things that once you earn enough of those, you can come trade them in and get something for your efforts. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had, and I don't know if it was the same person that you took it from, or if this has been kind of passed down along, agencies all around Texas, but I had another chief on here that was talking about that program, and that's fun. You have like almost like gamification, where you're getting these prizes for your efforts, and then you can trade it in for something tangible, and then you're like wanting to do more good things because you want that water bottle or
right,
whatever
right.
it is. You're like, I'm going to
Yeah,
be extra nice today so that I can get that knife, or
yes.
whatever that prize is. I love that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, and anyone who's not, who's listening who maybe isn't aware of this, you guys had um, a flood that happened on July 4th of this year. And, for anyone who's unfamiliar with that particular event, it was extraordinarily devastating and tragic. And I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit more about what happened and kind of the aftermath of that as well.
Yeah, so we our community is located on the Guadalupe River. We're in one of the most dangerous river basins in the U.S. We received upriver about 17 inches of rain in a very small window. It created a massive wall of water that washed through, really from one end of the county to another and through our city. We lost 119 people. We've recovered 117. We still have two people missing that recovery efforts continue for. Through that incident, our officers responded to somewhere between 30 and 35 recoveries of human recoveries. The search, the recoveries, the incident itself, as we responded to the incident, all those things took a toll trying to move people to safety. I think for us as an organization, the timing of our wellness program, we really brought it online in the last year, and having that in place prior to this incident really benefited us. It was the first real test, and we never imagined we would test it to this degree. But it was the first real test we had, and I feel like overall as an organization, we responded well initially and post. We partnered with outside resources, with outside organizations that are also sending in peer support to help support us. And I think between the efforts of our internal team and the external teams, as well as the other external resources that we're leaning on, we're doing the best we can to take care of our folks afterwards. Just as we were coming on, we're continuing to learn lessons from this. We leaned heavily on our peer support people, and it's one of those things. Don't forget your peer support. They're out there supporting everyone else, and they're taking a lot on as they're doing that. They're taking that on from those other folks, and we're kind of starting to see, okay, we need to make sure we're giving extra effort to those folks now as well. We're seeing the effects at this point of such a major incident.
Yeah. I have family in Texas. My dad lives in Waco, my dad and my uncle and everyone live out in Waco. And when this happened, my family was calling me just crying. They were so devastated, by the loss. And I know that there were, you said 119 people who were lost, and there were children included in that number. And so, um, there were prayers and support coming from all of us because we were watching it, obviously watching it on the news or watching it on social media, and it was devastating. And when you had shared this with me, that was one of the things that stuck out was you said, you know the efforts that you had put in proactively were things that you could lean on during that really hard time. And no one can prepare for something like that. You can be prepared for tragedy and for, in the event that certain things happen, but you can never prepare for absolutely everything. And so having something in place in the event, so that you can lean on that is so important. And it's a message to anybody, the proactive efforts that you put in now will help you and your people later. And I do appreciate that you said look out for your peer support, because you're actually the first person who said that on this podcast. And it's true. I think sometimes you forget about the people who are um, leading. I'm going to, leading those efforts. And we also forget about leadership. And that's another thing I kind of want to point out because you, I'm looking straight at you, you as a leader, you also need those resources. And sometimes we forget that the people who are, kind of taking that on in those leadership positions, forget to also take care of themselves. So, um, thank you for sharing. And, thank you for the proactive efforts that you put in place beforehand. What is next? I know that you guys are still evolving and trying to grow the program. So, what is kind of some foreshadowing on what you think is the future of your wellness program and the things that you're going to do organizationally to support your people?
We're really right now, we've always had the physical fitness testing requirement twice a year. We're really trying to shift that from a position of, hey, you have to pass this twice a year to meet standards to, okay, how well can we do on this? We want to try to shift our cultural focus from what's the minimum to we don't care what the minimum is. We're chasing, what the top end is. I heard an interesting conversation the other day in reference to the Marine Corps. You ask a Marine, what is the base of their physical fitness, and they can't tell you, but they can tell you what the maximum is,
Mm,
and that's because that's their goal and that's what they're trained towards. I tested that theory internally with one of our Marines, former Marines, and yeah, he had no clue what the minimum standard was. He knew what the maximum was and what he was trying to get, and that's part of what we do within our organization. We kind of have a saying, hashtag pursue excellence, and that's what we try to apply to everything within the organization. Our wellness program is one of those things. How do we pursue excellence in our wellness program? What have we learned from this event? As I mentioned, our most recent lesson is supporting our peer support folks and watching them and ensuring we're getting them the support that they need post event. Now that we're 100+ days into this,
Mm.
we see the effects, and we need to make sure that we're reacting to that. For the program itself, we will continue to grow, continue to change. We have internally, we have small pockets of individuals who do things like they try to gather groups to go run Spartan races.
Mm.
They try to find things that organizationally or as a shift that they can surround themselves with folks of like-mindedness and go try to accomplish something. And whether that's something as challenging as a Spartan beast race that I think we had 4 or 5 go to this last weekend, or if it's something as simple as, okay, we're going to put together, we're going to be be very directed in how we're going to approach organizationally our interactions. We're about to move to a much larger facility, and we recognize moving from a small, cramped building into a 2.5 times the same size facility, that we're going to have to be very intentional in our interactions with our people, or we're going to lose folks in this large space. Those are
Mm.
all things that we're thinking about that tie to the organizational culture and the overall, I guess you'd say, wellness of our personnel, and how do we intentionally socialize to keep those connections in a much larger space.
I'm a really big proponent. I was, smiling when you were saying like not settling for the minimum standard. I'm a huge proponent for how can you raise the bar. And I think that we can look at this from a few different angles. And, you know, physically, sure, we could say, how can we raise the bar with our physical fitness? How can we improve ourselves incrementally? I think that that's kind of the key, because if you tell someone who's maybe not physically there, you need to now be at the top level and jump 100 steps, then maybe it's not realistic. But I agree, how can we strive to be the best? And I think that we can also think about this mentally. How can we strive to know more, educate ourselves? How can we strive to have, better coping mechanisms with things? How can we challenge our thought process and be more open-minded to different things and different ways of learning and doing things? So I think that you can take a look at every aspect of wellness and every aspect of your life and ask yourself, where is maybe that 1% of improvement? Where is that opportunity for just 1%? And maybe that's having deeper, more thoughtful conversations with your family or your friends or your peers. Maybe that's maybe trying to just have one less negative thought per day, and start
Yeah.
practicing more positivity. And so I think this idea of 1% every day, raising that bar to strive to be the absolute best version of yourself, is something that I personally try to do. And I think that when you do that and when you have people who start to do that, it's a ripple effect. Other people want to meet that standard and want to meet that, because I think there is a little bit of FOMO. Like, I think people like don't want to be the one person who's dragging behind. They want to elevate themselves to the rest of the group. But I also think that like we all know what it feels like to be like, oh, this is good enough. We know like how it feels in our body to be like, yeah, whatever, like this is fine, versus achieving something bigger than yourself or better than maybe you have before, what that feels like. And it's so much better. The effort is there, it takes time and it's hard to do it. But I think everyone can relate to that feeling of accomplishing something better than the bare minimum. So I really like that thought process a lot.
It's like I said, that's something that we're trying to sew into our culture.
Mm.
We've really worked hard at being one team. It's kind of been our motto for the last 4 years. We're really transitioning now that we feel like we've accomplished that and really sewn ourselves together as a team. And when we talk about one team, we're not just talking internal to the organization or shifts. We're talking about we are talking about that, but we're also talking about how do we interact with our partners in other city departments. Uh, Example of that is we're going to loan our peer support folks to our finance and billing department. They have interactions with the public on different issues, and they said you'd be surprised when people are dealing with their finances how much stuff they pour out on you, and they're looking for ways to help support each other, and what do they do in that scenario, and we offered our assistance to send our folks over to just say, hey, here's some things you can think about. Here's how you can support each other in these types of situations. So, we look at that team as from the basic of a shift through a division through the whole organization of the police department, whole city organization, and then the community is the larger piece of that team. How do we work alongside the community?
Yeah, I love it. I used to work in a billing department. And so when you said that, I was like, yep,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
I would have I would have never thought that. We were discussing the overall mental health of the city organization in a senior executive team meeting the other day. And I just threw out, I said, hey, we've got peer support folks. They may not be experts, but they could certainly come over and provide some informal in-service type training or ideas to any of your departments. And our finance director was the first one to email me before the meeting was even over. And I was like, I would not have even thought of that. That would not have been the first group that I thought would have raised their hand. But wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really smart and it's good to support as many people as you can, but from the financial perspective, because I came from that, it's money is emotional, and so you deal with a lot. So I like that
Right.
you guys were like, hey, how can we open this up? How can we support as many people as possible? And that creates the culture. We talked about that before, about everyone feeling seen and valued for what they do. And, if that particular person or department didn't have any resources before, and now you're like, hey, like, we want to support you. We can send some people over to support you. Now that individual feels seen and supported and valued as a part of the team. And I think that that really does lay into retention. I think that the more people feel like they're cared for, the more they're going to want to work hard, maybe the more morale they're going to have, and then the longer they're going to stay. It sounds so simple because I feel like it kind of is, it's like you can't keep everyone, obviously, it's never going to happen. But I think, the conversations I have, the organizations, I shouldn't say the organizations, the people that I've talked to who have left organizations, the number one reason is because they didn't feel like they were seen or supported or valued. So, and that doesn't take money.
Yeah. A little time.
Little time, yeah, little awareness. I have just a couple final questions for you, but one of the things that I find to be really interesting is, a lot of the leadership that I talk to come from an environment where wellness wasn't a thing, when you were coming up, and it wasn't something that was focused on. And maybe there was a bigger stigma than there is now today, about all of it. But now, as a leader, and your entire command staff and leadership team is in the same position where now you are, put into these leadership roles where you have to adapt and have an open mind and be supportive of the changes and the evolution of wellness over time. And you had told me that you have a really supportive leadership team, people who you can really lean on who are also advocating for the wellness of your department. Did that just come naturally, or how do you, because we talk a lot about buy-in, and I think when we talk about buy-in, we talk about it from, um, you know, under leadership, everyone within the organization who maybe isn't a part of the leadership team. But my question for you is, how do you get buy-in from leadership, especially when they come from a generation that maybe didn't support this before?
Yeah, it's my generation. This is very foreign to us. This is not we're not native to this. I tell people quite often we're making better police officers now than we've ever made in the past. They're much better at everything that they do than we were because they have much deeper understanding for things. I think for us in internal to KPD, I think our working on our one team mentality, one team culture. I think that really helped develop some of the ties and some of the concern. And as we talked internal as a command group, as far as how we were going to approach this, there were a lot of those conversations of the old dogs that were like, I just need to get over it. It's part of what we do. It's part of the job, and there is to an extent. It is kind of what we sign up for, but it is also a responsibility to ensure that we're taking care of our folks. And I think once we started having those conversations internally, and what does it look like, and how can it benefit us, how can it benefit our personnel, and what does it do for our organization, I think the buy-in came quickly. It really wasn't we had to go twist anybody's arm. It was really shifting the thought process because folks would kind of default back to what they were used to, and we would have to call it out, and we call it out less and less now. And it's one of those things where you have to rely on the people around you to help ensure that you're taking these things into consideration when you see behaviors out of somebody that are abnormal and are not what their normal operating status is, and what could be the root cause of that other than just, okay, yes, you do have to address whatever that behavior is, but now you also need to address what might be causing that behavior and what's going on that is creating this.
Yeah, understanding the difference between root cause and symptoms.
Right.
Um, you know, I I think that when we can ask ourselves, like, what is the bigger picture? And I know, you talked about what you guys have as far as like a mission forward, one team. And when you have that deeper purpose or deeper mission or that deeper why, we talk about the why a lot, it's easier to, I think, take a step outside of yourself. And I have to do that a lot too, because I think we all have that. All have our individual perceptions and perspectives on things. And we all were raised in different ways. We all came from different, environments as kids. We all had different life and professional experiences. And that shapes the way we see the world and it shapes the way we operate. And I think the idea is that we can continue to be open-minded and be learners. But sometimes that's hard. Sometimes we do kind of get stuck in our like one track. And I'm guilty of this too, where I've had to almost check myself a little bit and take a step back before responding and asking, what is the why? Like, what is the goal here? And making it less about me and more about we. Because I think that sometimes if you can say, hey, it's not about me, it's about them, then it gives you a different perspective. And just because something doesn't impact me, I used to have this attitude, when I was younger. I was really reactive. I was really judgmental of people. I had a hard upbringing. And so when people would tell me stuff, I remember just being so judgmental and cold. And I was like, so what? Like, get over it. And I feel really bad for that now. I actually really regret the way that I treated people when I was, and this was a long time ago, but still. I remember like friends coming up to me sad that their parents were getting divorced or something. And I was like, who cares? So what? It's not a big deal. Like I've been through worse. Like it was kind of this like lens that I operated within. And I've now have this understanding that just because something doesn't impact me and I don't think that maybe it's a big deal does not mean that it's not really, really impactful for somebody else. And if I can have that moment of like, it's not about me and I'm not the one that's in this situation, and how I feel about it doesn't necessarily matter or impact the way someone else feels about something, that has helped me a lot to build kind of that empathy and that understanding, which can be really hard. So I really like that if you guys really try to stick to the mission of like, hey, like we're all here to support each other as one team.
Yeah,
My,
that,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, that yeah, you're tracking very very closely to some of the folks within our organization, maybe even myself at times, and you really have to call yourself out, check your ego at the door, uh, and look at it holistically. Of okay, what is going on with this full issue, and how can you support that?
Yeah. And it's hard. And, we're never ever going to be perfect. There's still times where I'm like, man, I should have showed up for someone a little bit better, or maybe I should have listened a little bit better or tried to understand more. But I think just having these conversations and awareness around it is such a huge step in a forward direction. So, um, my final question for you is for the younger generation. And I know you said that you guys are, creating better officers and, employees than ever before. And my question is, what words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
I think being responsible for the people around you as well as yourself. You're always responsible yourself, but I think you have to be responsible at times for those around you and recognize when something is going on with someone. Because I know when I worked shift, I knew my shift mates and I knew when something was off. And I can't say that at that point in my career, I was always emotionally intelligent enough to go, hey, somebody needs to go talk to that person and see what's going on. And I've seen officers and worked with officers that went through traumatic situations, and you see all the things occurring, and then you see the repercussions from it. They're out of law enforcement within a year or two. They're divorced. They're changing, where they live. They're moving away from everyone, withdrawing. And, I think being as a young officer on the street, I think the challenge is to really take care of each other and recognize when something's off, and don't be scared to either approach it yourself, or if you don't feel comfortable, find that person within your organization that has that skill set that can go help take care of that person. You might save their life, you might save their marriage, you might save their career. It's I think it's important for young officers to recognize the stresses of the job that they're going into. Fantastic, wonderful career, but at the same time, uh, big responsibilities that come along with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here today and talking about wellness and all the things that you guys are doing organizationally. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, and appreciate talking with you.
Yeah, of course. We'll definitely stay in touch.
All right, sounds good.